Standard Izzet Cauldron is an incredibly powerful deck, but it is also incredibly easy to mispilot. For it is, like blue-black mid-range, a deck primarily based around best of 3, a format where flexibility and resilience are rewarded, but the deck is still absolutely very fun and very powerful on the best of 1 ladder. So here is how to build Izzet Cauldron, or alternatively, once the bans come down, Izzet FOMO. Because once we get the Cauldron and the Vivi out of the way, the rest of the deck is basically entirely a separate thing. Like and subscribe if you're watching this video after the bans happen. So yeah, obviously, first of all, Soul Cauldron, Vivi, 4 ofs, they're in the name of the deck. We start there. It should be noted that you only need a single copy of each of these in any given game, so you shouldn't be afraid to discard these. In fact, discarding Vivi is the entire point, but especially discarding Vivi to get, say, Delirium on a FOMO is absolutely worth it, and you should go for it pretty much every time. If I can say anything about these 2 cards, it would be, this is not an Omniscient style combo where if you sacrifice everything but your last life point to get this combo out, you will not immediately win the game. You will in fact get run over if you have on the board only a Soul Cauldron with a Vivi under it. No, this is very much an establish board presence situation and then pull out the rocket launcher that is your Soul Cauldron. And you will find that you have many games on ladder where you don't even finish resolving the Soul Cauldron before your opponent concedes. They will simply see you cast it, look at their hand, realize they don't have any removal, and just peace out, assuming that you have the combo. Now, the combo in question is not actually any particular infinite loop, it's just an insane amount of value. Once you have a Soul Cauldron with a Vivi under it, every single creature you control for free gets add a bunch of mana to your mana pool once per turn. You can then use this with other cards that either generate +1/+1 counters on their own, or are just really big and can use the single +1/+1 counter from Soul Cauldron to go off. The actual tentpoles holding this deck up are Proft's Eidetic Memory and Fear of Missing Out. Because, and if you haven't seen this go off, it's insane. Fear of Missing Out is a 2 mana 2/3, excellent defensively, lets you discard and then draw, which gives you additional combat steps if you have achieved Delirium. Proft's Eidetic Memory is an enchantment that puts +1/+1 counters on your creatures at the beginning of combat, which means that yes, if you trigger Fear of Missing Out's additional combat steps, you get additional Eidetic Memory triggers. So you can have some very, very large creatures very quickly with these 2 creatures out. Usually just a single Fear of Missing Out is enough to really beat down people and put them in a situation where they either need to have an answer on that specific turn or they're going to lose the game. Now, the package of support that we're using is not technically very specific, and it changes from set to set as different things come in and out. At the moment, it's Marauding Mako as just an excellent 1-drop that gets bigger every time you discard cards, an effect that is usually a cost. Tersa Lightshatter, a 3 mana 3/3 with haste that lets you discard 2 cards to trigger Marauding Mako twice, and then draw 2 cards, which makes it a hasty 5/5 if you've cast Eidetic Memory the turn before. And then Winternight Stories, one of the best creature targeting draw spells in Standard right now. And Greasewrench Goblin, a 1 mana 2/1 that seems actually kind of terrible until you have it in play with either an Eidetic Memory or a Marauding Mako, in which case its exhaust puts a +1/+1 counter on it, gives you card selection, and then also adds 2 additional +1/+1 counters to the board. Surprisingly good. Ratios for all of these are fairly simple. It's 4 of the cards that you want as many as possible on the board. Some of them it's 3 ofs or 2 ofs, and you can say whatever excuse you want there. You know, I only want 2 Tersa Lightshatter because I don't want to have additional copies bricking up my hand when actually I just don't want to spend the wild cards. And of course, most importantly, in a deck that is not attempting to absolutely go face in every situation, no matter what, is removal. Interaction, if you will. Torch the Tower is an absolute must play in Standard right now. 1 mana, 2 damage to a creature, instant speed, exiles it in case it has a death trigger of some kind. You're killing your Llanowar elves, you're killing your life gain rabbits, you're killing your chocobos. But all of those creatures also generally die to a fire magic, which I've definitely wished that I've had in my hand a lot more than I've actually appreciated having in my hand when I've had it. It's one of those cards that in theory, fantastic. Instant speed, 1 mana, hit the entire board. Sometimes you absolutely annihilate a player who's got a Chocobo and a Llanowar Elves on the board. Sometimes you're like, wow, I'm spending 3 mana for an instant speed, Pyroclasm, and my opponent just cracked their Terramorphic Expanse in response to make all of their Chocobos go from 2 to 3 toughness. Which is where Abrade comes in. Also, you absolutely need an answer to Pinnacle Starcage in this deck. Artifact removal is a must. And really, it comes down to either Abrade or Into the Floodmoor. Abrade being better on account of the fact that it permanently removes the card, but Into the Floodmoor generally works just fine because you can just end of your opponent's turn, Floodmoor the Starcage, get all of your stuff back, and then untap and kill them. I personally am a big fan of the Abrade specifically because I've found that I generally need the 3 damage upside more than I need the only cast for a single blue mana upside of Into the Floodmoor. But really it's going to come down to personal taste, what time of the day you're playing, where you are on ladder, essentially what the metagame is. 2 notable cards that I'm not playing in my list right now are Draconautics Engineer and Steamcore Scholar. These cards are both absolutely fantastic, and I may be completely out of line for not playing them, but I've generally found that Draconautics Engineer is much more of a combo-heavy card that really fits best as a card that gets sideboarded in the best of 3 situation where you need additional punching power, and when you're fighting for your life in every possible moment on the best of 1 ladder, I haven't generally found the time to be rewarded by the additional power and flexibility of Draconautics Engineer over, say, just having removal or more 1-drops. And Steamcore Scholar is kind of a side grade to Tersa. Flying is an argument against haste, and drawing the cards instead of discarding the cards first, obviously a big upgrade. Having an incredibly reliable Eidetic memory into a flying 4/4 is just incredibly good, but also sometimes you still die if you haven't put the 5 damage on board. Again, very much a case of do what you want as you want with the wild cards that you have. Hang on, let me just go through the deck list and see if I've missed anything. Wild Ride. This is a 1 mana sorcery that gives +3/+1 and haste. I think this might be the secret sauce in the deck. This is like adding salt to your meal. When you do it right, you can't actually taste it, but when you don't do it, you can't taste the entire meal. Wild Ride does a surprising number of things. 1, it's a sorcery that you're happy to discard, so it just switches on Fear of Missing Out more often than not. Also, it's a 1 mana red sorcery, so sometimes you can just turn 3 Fear of Missing Out into Wild Ride, and then you're attacking with your 5/3 that gives you additional combat steps because you've used playing this sorcery to hit Delirium. Wild Ride's fantastic. You don't need 4 of it, you need 2 maximum. But whatever you do, don't be like me and almost entirely forget about the card until the very, very end of your deck building process.